Everybody, it's me, your buddy Dave, the host here at the Dark Stuff channel on YouTube. Thanks a lot for checking out my latest video. So this week I'm going to do a quick review of the Flaming Lips show that I just saw. I showed you a little clip there. I saw them last week on Friday, the 16th of June, 2023, at a brand new place called the Steelhouse. It's a brand new venue in Omaha. I think it holds about 3,000 people or so. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere in that range. The show was sold out. And I wasn't even planning on going, to be totally honest. As much as I love the Flaming Lips, I had sort of decided I wasn't going to go. And about 6 o'clock that night, I get a text from a good friend of mine. It says, hey, we have an extra ticket to the Flaming Lips. Are you interested? And it was like, the show's at 8:30 or whatever, and this was 6 o'clock. And I was like, okay, let's do this. Seen the Flaming Lips probably about 10 times maybe over the last 32 years or so. I think I first got into the Lips probably when Hit to Death in the Future Head came out. I had a roommate who was really into the band, and I remember him playing that CD and me kind of getting into it. I think my fandom really kicked in on the next album, which was Transmissions from the Satellite Heart. You know, last Friday's show is probably the first time I've seen the band in 10 years, because I looked it up. They played the 2013 Omaha Music Festival. It's a festival I used to work with, and I think that was the first year I was there, and I didn't get any footage of them actually playing, but I did get a snapshot or two of Wayne when they were setting up earlier in the day. And while that show was visually stunning, I remember not really caring much for the set list. That a lot of the stuff that I liked wasn't really getting played, and it was more in favor of that stuff that was brand new at that time. I mean, that makes sense, of course, in retrospect. When you talk about great bands that have great runs of albums, usually you talk about a run of 3. I'm going to talk about a run of 4 that the Flaming Lips had, starting in 1990 with this one. Now, this is a expanded edition reissue, but the album was initially called In a Priest-Driven Ambulance. This is incredible. This is the beginning of the 4-piece Flaming Lips. They had been a trio in their early days. So next one is Hit to Death in the Future Head. This was my introduction to them. This was 1992. Next up was this one. This was kind of their breakthrough album, Transmissions from the Satellite Heart from 1993. It had the hit She Don't Use Jelly on it. And then the follow-up to that came out in 1995, and that was Clouds Taste Metallic. And that run of 4 albums, they're all perfect. Stellar. I love the guitar interplay. There were a couple of different players in the lineup at that time. The first 2 albums featured Jonathan Donahue on lead guitar. He went on, left the band after Hit to Death was recorded, and he went on to do Mercury Rev. On these next 2, they brought in a new lead guitar player, and his name was Ronald. And I was trying to figure out his last name, and it actually is not in the CD. They just call him Ronald. That string of 4 albums is so epic. It pretty much helped to define my 90s. And when I think of the Flaming Lips, I still think of them in that period. You know, it's hard for me not to. That's when I first really got into the band. Week's show was nothing like they were in the 90s. It's like they were a completely different band, and in a lot of ways they were. Nowadays, the only members that are long-term, I mean, there's Wayne Coyne, the singer frontman, and he is the founding member of the band and the only original member left. Stephen Drozd, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, joined the band after Hit to Death in the Future Head was recorded, and he became the drummer. he's still in the band, although he stopped being the drummer at one point, and now he's a multi-instrumentalist, and he's much more involved in the creative process than just an average drummer would. And he was really starting to do that almost right away. He became a pretty integral member of the group. Now, even if you go way back to the very, very old days, look at this Flaming Lips VHS live video. I think this is shot in 1987 or so. If you go all the way back to then, you know, they were putting off smoke bombs and doing trippy lights and stuff like that. And they used to tour a lot with the Butthole Surfers, so they were kind of along those lines of kind of wild psychedelic craziness. So they've always been into putting on a show. That goes back to their origins. The tour that is going on right now that I saw is they're doing the 20-plus anniversary of this album, Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots. It was their 2002 album. It was a huge album for the band. It did extremely well. It had the song Do You Realize? It was the song from that record, which, in my opinion, is in the top 10 greatest rock songs ever created. If you listen to Do You Realize and don't have some type of emotional reaction when you hear it, at least the first time, the second time, the third time, it's like, do you even have a heart? I seriously question. Yoshimi, though, the band went on a run of albums that I'm not really all that fond of. You know, at War with the Mystics, Embryonic, The Terror. Well, this is their covering of Dark Side of the Moon. It's actually not bad. This is Ozzy Modley, and this is King's Mouth. And all of those records, like, they might have their moments occasionally, especially at War with the Mystics, has a couple of really good songs. But for the most part, they feel just like they're being weird for weirdness' sake, and they're not very tuneful, and they're just not that enjoyable, and they've kind of lost me musically a little bit over the years. You know, but because Yoshimi is such a big record, and they're doing the 20th anniversary, that was a pretty exciting moment to give the Lips a chance, because that was what they were going to do, is come out and do that album in its entirety for the first hour, take a quick break, then come out and do a set that was more career encompassing.
What is love and what is hate? Your calculations error.
Career encompassing part is a little bit misleading, because while they did play She Don't Use Jelly, which I was excited about that they still play the tune, and they did do stuff off the Soft Bulletin, that was pretty much it in terms of, they didn't go any older than that one song in terms of She Don't Use Jelly. One thing that I have to constantly remind myself is that when you're reviewing a show or a band or whatever, you have to review them about what they are, not what they aren't. And so for me to get hung up on, well, they're not the same as they were in 1995 or whatever, yeah, that's true. They're not the same as they were in 1995. There's a bunch of different people up there. So trying to just look at it objectively from that standpoint, I will say they did put on an enjoyable show. There are a lot of sort of extra musicians. There's two drummers. There's a guitar player, you know, and it kind of gets lost in all the visual stuff because it does look really cool, and that's fine. They had these big inflatable like robots to represent what's on Yoshimi there, you know, that sort of thing. That took up huge swaths of the stage. The show does really feel like it's Wayne Coyne and some backing musicians, and even though Steven is a full-fledged member and is very involved in the creative aspect, he was sort of off to the side and a little bit back, and maybe that's the way he wants it. I'm sure it is, but it does feel like it's the Wayne show and everybody else is just sort of a backing musician. Having said all that, I did still really enjoy the show. I could nitpick about song selection, but it's not like it was 10 years ago where they were just playing stuff from like that era, and it was very, very difficult to just vibe on a whole hour of like their newest album or whatever. They're not doing that anymore. They do mix it up a lot more. Anyways, that's all. I'm going to wrap it up here. I don't need to belabor the point. It's the Flaming Lips, folks. If you get a chance, I would definitely see them while you can.